Welcome to another episode of Aspiring for More, guys. We are teaching you how to run a business by talking to people who are running a business. And today we are talking with Emily Smicker. She is an event planner for the Erie Zoo currently, as well as doing some freelancing things on the side. And the reason why I think it's so important to be able to talk with her about the different things we talk about is because from a business perspective, being able to host the events and to be the host of the party that you're bringing your customer to is a huge advantage to be able to sell new clients, especially with this new millennial generation that's going to be the target prime customer group. Being able to have fun, engaging events is going to be vital to be able to stand out from just the normal every other day business that might be competing against you. So guys, please take some notes on how to run a business, and if you want to, reach out to her and she can help you out. Also, at the end of this, we talk a little bit about mental health, and it's a bit of a sidetrack, but it's really good content, and I think it does help the entrepreneurial community to be able to be out front and to speak about these things. So if you're into that, stay tuned afterwards, but if not, it's at the end, so you can stop right after all the event planning content. Hey, Emily, how's it going today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a long day, like you were telling me yours has been.
Yeah, mine was a 4:30 a.m. day, but still kicking. I love it.
Now, are you typically a morning person, or do you hate waking up early?
I used to hate it, and I wouldn't say I am a morning person, but I've learned how to be happy in the mornings, if that makes sense.
I think that's something I'll need you to teach me. There was like a period where when I was in school, it was I wouldn't, because I was homeschooled, I didn't have to wake up super early.
Oh.
So I would sleep in long. And
wow.
It was
you were lucky.
Yeah. And then I came up to Erie and I started doing more entrepreneurial things. And then I felt guilty for not waking up at 6 in the morning. So I was and 6 isn't even that early, but I'm I'm going to wake up. And then I've come to the point where I'm I really don't care. I'm sleeping until 7:30.
You got to do your own habit, I think. But I've noticed that there are times that I have to wake up early. Ideally, I would like to sleep till 9 every day. That would be my dream. But it isn't the case. But I've noticed that if I wake up that early, might as well make it a good morning rather than a grumpy morning.
That's true. Now, what are some things you do, since we're talking about it right now, to make your mornings happier?
Honestly, I have a dog, and he is the cutest little nugget in the world, and I adore him. So I kind of just take a moment instead of getting annoyed with his excitement in the morning and more try to adapt his excitement. I know that sounds really corny, but I do. He's just so excited for a new day, and it's okay. And I take
feed off his energy.
Yeah, and I also listen to I wait to listen to my favorite podcast in the mornings. Ooh. So that's how I get ready and wake up slowly. So
gotcha.
It's nice.
Yeah, I roll out of bed around 7:30. And I'm pretty usually rested because I try and get anywhere between 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep every night, just because I've been doing a lot of studying on how bad it is not to sleep. And
yeah, everybody,
everybody around me is chill, stop telling me to sleep so much. But it's this is a big deal. So I usually roll out of bed and pretty happy in the morning, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of have this mindset, and we'll talk about mental stuff later on, but I just have this mindset of just be happy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's unhealthy for me to just force myself, but it's there's no reason to be upset. I don't care if I got no sleep last night. Nobody deserves me to be giving them a bad day because of my day being bad.
Agreed.
But that's kind of my morning routine, not anyone asked. But
I was interested to know. So
thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
So you plan events.
I do.
You're an event planner.
Yeah.
How'd you kind of get into that?
By accident. Ooh. So I have been doing events about 11 years now. I started my senior year of high school, which was kind of out of the blue. I actually originally wanted to get into concert production and started being interested in that about 5th grade when I went to my first concert, 98 Degrees. Who cared about the people on stage? I just wanted to watch the production side. So senior year of high school, I was in the art club and had the privilege of being able to kind of do a unique student talent show. And instead of just doing the stereotypical student talent show, we came up with the idea for scones and microphones. So what we did is we turned our cafeteria into like a mini cafe after hours, like dim lights, lightings, and all that, and had local musicians, like acoustic musicians, people would read poetry or showed their art, and then we would serve coffee and tea and scones. And I had organized that. And after that, I just kind of caught the bug and couldn't stop organizing events.
And I mean, personally, I don't really think I'm that crazy good at organizing events, but like I definitely see the draw to it. Like like when I used to do like a lot of work in construction and stuff, and my favorite jobs were the one where you could see the progress of the projects getting done. Like when you're hanging the drywall, like it's all studs and then it's like a finished room like this.
Yes.
And I feel like it's pretty similar with event planning.
It is. It's a lot of time-consuming prep work, and a lot of hard work and decision-making, and it's so worth it though once you get to the big day or days. If you're doing a festival, and seeing it all to come together, and then seeing people come in and enjoy it, or like experience it the way you hoped they would experience it, or experience it even better than you hoped. That's the best thing. But it's always the only sad thing about event planning is that the prep time is very long, and then the actual event is fleeting. It's very quick.
You need to like plan some kind of Coachella.
That would be my dream. I've always wanted to, actually, I always, since like 6th grade, wanted to be a part of planning Vans Warped Tour.
Really?
Yeah, but I never figured out how to be a part of that. Now they're down to just 2 concerts a year rather than the whole tour, but maybe someday.
Maybe you'll get in and re-bring it back.
Hey, you never know.
Rise up from the ashes or something. But so once you got out of high school, how did you get into the industry?
So I went a very bizarre route. So, going into college, I decided to go to Grove City College, which is not a college you would necessarily choose for wanting to get into the entertainment industry. In fact, it's probably one of the last ones you would. But I do have a strong faith, and I liked that. But I also really wanted to expose myself to people who were not open-minded, if that makes sense. I hung out with the theater crew. I went to public school. Though I had a strong faith in certain views, I really love all different kinds of people and love hearing everybody's views. And I knew that going to Grove City, I'd be surrounded by a lot of like-minded people, and that would probably drive me crazy, but it would grow me as a person. And beyond that, their academics are phenomenal. So I decided to go into the communications department. You know, that was my major. And I figured I would kind of figure it out as I go. And I did. I had an incredible advisor. Her name's Dr. Scott, Jennifer Scott, and who she is now the head of the communications department. She is one of the hands down the most influential, advisors, teachers in my life. She really encouraged me to, if the classes weren't there, to find the extracurriculars and to create the opportunities for myself, which I think were the most beneficial thing I could have done, because learning events is very much, you can't really study events. You can, you should have knowledge of other events, but you will not know how to do an event until you are thrown into it and have to do it.
So how much of that education do you think actually prepared you for it, apart from just the experience of like putting yourself out there in college, kind of how you did it uniquely? What do you think played a bigger role?
Definitely my hands-on experience, my extracurriculars. My communication studies, I did get a lot from certain, I had a lot of, public speaking was huge for me. I used to be terrified of public speaking. So that class was very influential, learning more about the media in society, and organizational communication, how to speak within organizations was very key. But those are just what I just named 3 classes out of my entire career. I really enjoyed college. I did gather little bits and pieces, but doing the actual events, as being part of the radio station, as being part of the concert production group, as being part of the orientation board social committee, that's where I got my experience. That's where I learned that I loved doing events and I was good at events. So
Yeah, so you were talking about you love being able to like put the time in and seeing people get out of it what you wanted them to. What are some of the other things in event planning that you just really love to do? Like what draws you to planning an event?
oh man. I like thinking of out of the box ways to like of places to host events or ways to do something if it's been done a certain way forever, to just kind of like think of something off the wall. And I like when people tell me like, oh, that's too hard or that's impossible, and be like, let's really make sure it's impossible before we say no. So that's kind of, I really enjoy that. I like coming up with layouts for events, and the marketing part is really fun for me too.
And that's something that I know I was reaching out to people about that they have a really hard time with their events. And we'll definitely touch on that. But you were saying it kind of seems like it's the process of the events is what you love. And it seems from all the research I've done on event planning and all the podcasts I was listening to, is that's a pretty reoccurring theme, is event planners are very resilient. They don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And they kind of enjoy that. How do you think someone can adopt that if they're trying to just host a small event for like their business?
How to adopt that resilience?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just kind of, you really have to want and believe in what you're doing. And when you do, you'll do anything to make it happen. But within reason. I think it's really important to think about how it affects everyone involved. Like don't just keep pushing for something that may not be beneficial. But just believe in what you're doing, and I think it will come naturally.
Gotcha.
I mean, I've been a part of events where I wasn't super passionate about it, or I didn't quite feel that it was the most positive thing, and I definitely I did them and I could do them, but I was going through the motions rather than like going above and beyond, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. So we know what you like about them. What are some things that you dread about the event planning process?
Making everyone happy. It's a fine balancing act to make sure that you're doing something that you don't ever offend somebody, whether it's using a certain company and not a different company, or having a certain musical act come in, or even just where you're placing vendors in relation to other things.
Yeah.
That's something I hate and I really don't like. I don't like figuring out power grids, like when you have like a food truck event, for example, and you have to figure out like, do you have enough electric to supply everyone? Where does it go? And I've learned how to do it, but I'm not strong at it, and it's really tedious.
Yeah, it's those things that aren't exactly in your wheelhouse of like how electricity works that you then have to like reteach yourself to get to the fun part. I mean,
yeah.
I can definitely see how that would be also a struggle for me, is like making everyone happy, because when it comes to the next event, you want to make sure that you don't have anybody on your bad. It's like, oh, well, you didn't choose me to do the lighting last time. So
exactly. And I will say, like, the most important part of any event is the people you work with. I may be an event planner or coordinator, but I could not have done any event without the teams and the sponsors and the vendors that I've worked with in the past. And it is so important to be respectful to those people, because they're hardworking people too, and they're doing the best they can. And you need to consider their business and how it's affecting them as well.
Gotcha. I mean, yeah. And then, and I feel like an event planning, your network really is kind of what you're working with, because if you know the right places to get into, if you have those relationships, it just makes it more options for your customers and who you're working for.
Absolutely.
What I really also wanted to get into on this podcast is how businesses can use events to kind of like market themselves and stuff, because I think that's kind of the way that I look at businesses. You should be the person hosting these conversations about your industry, all that. what do you think some benefits are in a business corporate setting that events can really lend to them?
Sure. I mean, I think when people, first of all, I think when people think events, they think of like big, fancy entertainment type events, but there is so much more to events. I've done everything from conferences to meetings, to, and all of those things for a corporate business would be really important. Hosting, for instance, I'm part of Radius Cowork. They do a thing called Lunch and Learn where you can go have lunch there and people talk about the different entrepreneurs, what they're doing in their businesses. And that creates networking opportunities, that creates hooking you up with somebody that has expertise in an area of your business that you may not have realized was lacking or needed a little oomph. And hosting, I think when you have a business and you do host a more like entertainment based event, that will bring in a whole new audience to you. It will captivate somebody who maybe when they hear the description of your business would be like, meh, but then they hear like, this is how we're incorporating it. And here we're going to throw a big party to show you how. Who's going to turn down a party invite, So
Exactly. There was some I was going to segue off. Oh yeah. So trying to figure out what type of event you should host.
Mm-hmm.
How much in depth do you actually go in that process of figuring it out? Or are you more like they have their idea and they come to you, or do you kind of help figure out what's the best event for each individual person?
Sure. So I'm still pretty early on in my independent work. A lot of what I've done has been I've been with businesses and been able to like help fill needs with that. But when it comes to people coming to me for advice, they usually come to me with their idea, and I would like to like hear about their business or their idea or what they're trying to accomplish and tell them how that fits with that or not. Like, maybe
Okay.
so it's more of like helping guide people into the right direction. I haven't yet had somebody come to me and be like, "Hey, I want an event, but I don't know what kind." It's usually
Gotcha.
somebody has an idea first and they come to me knowing I have executed all these different types of events and can I help them?
I see. So it's more of like a reality check with the
Mm-hmm.
person, like, hey, you're not going to be able to get a live gorilla at your event. I'm sorry.
Right. Or maybe like you don't have enough time to plan an event on this scale,
Mm,
or Erie won't like this type of event, which is also something you have to keep in mind is the area you're in and your main audience.
yeah. What would you say are some events that Erie would enjoy?
Would enjoy.
Yeah.
I think, especially these past couple of years, this focus on all local, like
Okay.
community-based events has been huge. It has been so cool to see the way that like the Erie Blues and Jazz Fest has grown, Celebrate Erie, the different aspects of the bike week, down to Harley, to Gears and Grub. That has been really cool. And I think people crave supporting other local businesses here. And so far, that's where I feel like the favoritism with the Erie crowd is leaning. And I think they want more local music too. It
Really?
seems like, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard from some people that Erie has a pretty impressive like local music scene,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, I don't really go to many like concerts or events like that, but I think I would like if there were more, I probably would. I would
Absolutely.
probably go.
I think there needs to be more. Having worked in the music industry for a while, Erie's very challenging with music, with new music.
Mm,
Here, it's all about name recognition and affordability. So when we were planning, so I was part of Celebrate Erie, not this past year, the year before, when we were thinking about what artists to bring in, we had to think about maybe not necessarily who is brand new on the radio and has their hit this summer. It would be somebody who Erie's heard of for the past couple of years. They know a couple of their songs. Now they're going to come out. And that's okay. But that's just our audience. So with the local bands in Erie, it's all about exposure, making sure that you're playing at these festivals but it's hard for them because then they're having to do a lot of payment free gigs,
mm.
Yeah.
And that can be hard, especially
Yeah.
when you're, I mean, I feel like, I mean, I don't know much about the music industry. Maybe you can speak to this, but it doesn't seem like it's very cheap to perform for a band.
No, it's not cheap and it's exhausting. Those guys and girls work their butts off and sing their hearts out, perform their hearts out every night a weekend, 3 nights a weekend, and get paid $100 if they're lucky. Don't forget that they have to drive to all these places and pack up and have their own equipment and pack up. And a lot of times you have to bring your own sound equipment too, which is a huge other investment.
Jeez.
So it's a lot. So support your local music, people. They deserve it.
So if like a local bank or something wanted to host an event to kind of like boost people coming in,
Yeah.
and they wanted to do a music event, how could they use that to their advantage to where they get recognition, but doing an event that doesn't really seem like it would fit?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I'd say turn it into like a mini block party type thing. Like use their parking lot, set up a tent and a stage, have some of the bigger name local bands that you can get in and afford to pay. Pay them, please. And throw a couple local food vendors in there and advertise it as like meet your local bank, like come meet the community, like make it relatable and show how they are supporting the community and more than just being a bank and providing for the people who live there, but they are now supporting these local musicians, these local food vendors, asking them or paying them to be a part of that.
Now, do you think, I mean, I think it would be, do you think it's more beneficial for them to do something like that than like a meeting about how to invest in your retirement account, like panel discussion?
I think it depends on what they're trying to accomplish. If they are trying to get more members of their bank, then doing something like that would be more eye-catching.
Mm-hmm.
If they are trying to educate, their members already and make sure they're doing being more wise with their investments or trust them more, having those classes or courses or seminars would be really key too.
Yeah, I guess it all comes down to what is your final goal? What do you really want to get out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's even like a hybrid of both.
Exactly.
Like bring people in with a huge, expensive block party and then have smaller individual classes that you can kind of host for people from there on out.
Absolutely.
Now, how important is it in an event to keep in mind the person coming to the event? And how do you stay on track of like giving them the best experience?
Extremely important. To be honest, what you want doesn't really matter. Are people going to come? That's what matters. How are they going to see this event? Are they going to walk in and feel like you cheaped out on everything? Because they want to feel like you're investing in them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I don't usually find it that hard, but I'm a very empathetic person. I love, like, kind of like I said before, I love to hear other people's point of views. I love to see things from a different viewpoint because I feel it makes me more creative. It expands and makes you a better person and you're able to relate a lot more. But I think a lot of people do struggle with that, especially like I've seen when working in the past, like they get their idea stuck in their head and they're like, this is what I want because it would be really cool. And it probably is really cool. But if it's not meeting the needs of the audience you're trying to capture, then what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, you're just throwing yourself a party.
Exactly. Which you can totally do, but it might be expensive if you're doing it on that scale.
Now, how do you know that what I think would be a cool event isn't what people are going to react to?
I mean, I think part of that comes from me growing up in this area. And just, I know this sounds awful and a cop-out answer, but I have such a strong intuition with things. I am very observant of the local events and stuff too since I was a kid. Like, I listen to what people say. I look on Facebook. I look in the reviews of, different online sources and see what people are saying about the events. I talk to my friends. Ask them, did you go? What'd you think? I talk to the vendors. What did you feel? And by constantly being engaged with the different segments of your community, you know, whether it be business owners, attendees, sponsors, you can really learn a lot about common interests there.
What do you think out of all of this research you've done is a mistake you see happen a lot with events in Erie? If there is one that kind of transcends.
Mm-hmm. The biggest problem, I think, is...
Or even a lot of small problems that you notice.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how to word this. Taking the vendors and the participants in the event for granted. So if you think you can do this big event, and also thinking you can do an event without, on your own without guidance, you know, or without input from other people or somebody on the outside. Because if you don't listen to people, constructive criticism is the only reason I've gotten to where I am. Bring it on.
Gotcha.
Tell me, but make it constructive. But also just kind of expecting people to bend to your will, like when you're booking, you know, whether you have little art stations or musicians coming in or food trucks or, you know, any other type of nonprofit vendor setting up, expecting them to just do what you say and not being understanding to their needs. That's can really ruin an event.
Yeah, it seems like there's a pretty fine line between not taking no for an answer, but also understanding what's best for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, like
I
might have an idea like, oh, I'm going to have this panel discussion and all these people are going to come in. But if logistically it works for nobody else, then you're just going to look like the tyrant that just wants what he wants.
And a great way to like make sure you're not crossing that line is keep that open communication with everybody in your event. There have been times I had to do things that my vendors were not happy about, and I might not have been happy about. But I told them, hey, this is what happened. Here's all the ways I tried to fix it. This is the best we can do. Can you guys understand that? Is that okay? Where can we compromise? Compromise. It's okay to do that. It's not a bad word when it comes to events.
Compromise is key. And just having empathy, like understanding that these people are here to try and get something out of it. And you want to make everybody happy at the end of the day.
Exactly.
That's the point of the event, is to create an environment where people can make memories, good things can happen for them. But they can be expensive. So how are some ways you can recoup the cost that you're putting into event with the event itself?
Now, I've done a lot of community events or ticketed events. So when I was doing ticketed events and doing concerts, that was challenging because you have to sell enough tickets to cover your costs, which is very hard. But depending on where you are and what you're doing, Grove City College, it was a little hard. But like with community events, the biggest asset, I think, is talking to local businesses or finding sponsors and stuff who really believe, like align with the vision of your event or with the goal of your event, and seeing and asking them for sponsorships. It is a great way for you to market them to maybe people they've never been marketed to before, and then them in turn support a way to better your community.
Gotcha. Now, in the timeline of setting up an event, is there like a strict guideline? Because the way I would look at it is like, is it like breaking the cardinal rule of event planning to promote an event, like to see if there's interest before you invest in it? Or should you have something that's already like kind of on its way before you start telling people?
I hesitate to release an idea before it's fully formed.
Okay.
Because there's so many times in events that, you know, we've had this fantastic idea, we think it's going to go great, and then we get 2 months into planning and you're like, wow, this is not going to look anything the way I wanted it to, or it should do, or we've been telling the team it's going to look like. So I think it's okay to put out posts, to go on Facebook or something and be like, hey, I've been thinking about doing something like this. Here's let me know, like, would you be interested in this? Yes or no, like kind of thing. But like, to go into details about this is happening, this is when, this is what it's going to be, general idea is okay to get feedback. I'm a big fan of surveys. I love sending out surveys and getting people's feedback, but yeah, don't release the event before it's started to be planned and pretty much locked in.
Gotcha. Because from a lot of the stuff that I was researching is like you can run into some big disasters that way. But I feel like I guess my mind before I was listening to that stuff was like, well, if I can pre-sell or like get the interest, then I know that when I make the event, I'm not going to be out
Sure.
so much
But
money.
then you can't guarantee you can fulfill your promise. And
that's true.
Then how do you explain that to all the people who are angry at you?
Yeah, that's true. Dang, planning events is not easy.
No, it's something else. It's a whole nother breed. It's a lot more complicated than people, I think, realize sometimes. And I understand why they don't realize that. 100%. I didn't truly realize it until I started doing it. So
yeah. I mean, before I started talking to you, if I were to plan an event, it would be the event that I thought was cool. It would be on my timeline. I would probably promote it way too early and it would probably all fail. So I'm glad we did this podcast because there's a lot of events I want to make. But
well, thank you for taking what I say to heart. That's cool too. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody else who's as open-minded to be like, hey, give me some feedback on this. Like I thought I had the right thing going because that happens to me too all the time. Being like, hey, especially now that I'm working at the zoo now, you know, I'm kind of more. I'm not as much of a senior role as I have been in past jobs, and that's okay though. But I'll come in and I'll have all these ideas, and I mean, the zoo's been around for how long? And people will be like, hey, we tried that, and it really didn't go well. And I'm like, okay, you know, like, so it happens to me a lot. Yeah, like, thank you for saving me before I just embarrassed myself in front of like hundreds of people. So no, it's a good thing. The conversation's always good.
And for me, if you have someone who knows what they're doing, like it doesn't make sense not to take their opinion on something. Like,
agreed.
Because you might have a good idea, but like if someone's telling you who's in, like if it's like your friend, like that's a stupid idea, you don't always have to take that to heart. But if someone who knows what they're doing saying this is going to fail, then your idea is going to look like crap and you're not going to actually get the desired finished product that you want if you would just take some feedback.
A little bit of guidance.
Exactly.
Like that's the thing. It's like it's not a rejection of your idea. It's more of a reshaping of it.
Exactly.
Like let's accomplish your goal. Let's do it. But let's do it right. You know?
How can we do it with the most value to the person coming? Now, when it comes to like people being engaged, how do you like engage people into an event? Like with music, I get it. Like there's a concert, they're singing along, they're participating, but like, I don't know. I guess when I look at events, I like can easily be steered away because I don't feel like I'm either welcomed or like valued there. And actually a quote I heard on a TED talk the other day was like, people come where they're welcomed, but they stay where they're valued. Yeah. So I kind of like took that to heart as far as like events I want to plan. How do I really make someone coming to an event feel like they're valued there?
Right. I think your staff is super important. And that's always going to be a struggle, especially the bigger the event you get, the more times that you're going to have volunteers or maybe staff that's not as invested in it. But at least if your leaders are out there and talking to people, I hate being in public. I like planning events because I can be behind the scenes, behind the curtain planning. But when I do an event, that's not where I am. I'm going to be right smack dab in the middle. I'm going to be available to every single person who comes by, everyone who wants to tell me the things they like or they don't like or want to know where the bathroom is. I will tell you. I will do the interviews on TV ahead of time so people know my name and know where to find me. You know, I think that's really important, being available and responsive online if you're advertising online, or having a phone number and email that people can contact you with ahead of time. And I think too, like when I would do Gears and Grub, we tried to incorporate little activities, you know, into it. We had like a cookie eating contest with icing on the lake, or the best thing we did was leave a blank space of sidewalk and put sidewalk chalk out. No joke.
Really?
It was the coolest thing. People, like not just kids, other people came down and just started playing in the chalk and creating awesome things. And it was something interactive for them to do. You know, I think interaction is really important. Yeah.
Give your audience something to do.
Yeah.
Now, and from where I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it from like a networking perspective. I mean, for me, networking events can be very awkward. Like going into it. How do you think networking could be done better as far as events go?
More couches.
More couches.
I kind of like networking events where it's not like a big room and you just like walk in. I like networking events where one, you can bring a friend. If it's not just like invite only, it's like invite plus one, because I think you always feel a little bit better when you can bring a colleague or someone you know. I like networking events where there's some sort of like food or you know, drinks, or like maybe a short video or some sort of something going on that you can talk about. People love to socialize, so you can talk about food if you really love food, or oh my gosh, I love this wine, or you know, that was a really neat video we just watched. And also just creating a cozy setting. I think setting atmosphere is everything for events, whether it's a networking event or an entertainment event. If you don't feel, if it's like a white room in cement floors and big and open, no one's going to feel comfortable going in there. You know what I mean?
It
so
just feels cold.
Choose a good setting, or like I said, throw some couches, or throw some private little areas where like someone can stand at a cocktail table in a corner and like get their bearings before they go socialize. And then I do like for networking events, I kind of like, if it's like a seminar, I like worksheets. I like things that like gives you a list of questions that you don't have to fill out there, but like gets you thinking about the subject matter. And it gives you, and if they do give you some chance to like make small groups and chat with each other about that. Does that make sense?
No, for sure. Like give some, like you want to create the small talk for the people to start their conversations and kind of have that. And I mean, I think personally for me, one of the things that I really would find valuable in an event, and kind of why I want to create events like this, is make it so that, excuse me, when you're alone, like when you feel alone at an event, you don't have to like feel awkward and alone. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%.
So like if you have like an art gallery networking event, I can go walking and looking at art, so I don't look like I'm awkwardly standing in the corner, like there's nowhere for me to go talk to someone.
Exactly. Yeah, there's something to look at. There's something to engage in. There's a natural opportunity for conversation, whether it comes or not. But you aren't feeling like, the weirdo standing in the corner, because I've been that weirdo standing in the corner or sitting next to a person and be like, hey, can I sit here? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, cool.
And then they go right back into their conversation.
I know. I'm a loser with no friends. It's fine.
And then like it doesn't even like open somebody up to feel like they can network, because you just like at least for me, and maybe there's people with like way more self-confidence than I do, but they're just like, I'm just in my head, like I probably look like an idiot. Everyone's probably like, who wants to go talk to that person? So
absolutely,
even when there is a conversation to start, I'm already in my head to begin with, that I'm like, what am I saying? Am I saying the right thing? Do I sound like an idiot? And like, then I'm jumbling over my words. And it's like, if I just had like something to go do, I think
it's a distraction, because otherwise you just have to keep reminding yourself that everybody in that room probably feels that way.
Yeah.
They're thinking the same things.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think having something there that you can create conversation around, even when you don't know a single person. I mean, like I said, like you said, an art gallery, you can go around and look at the art, and someone could be standing there looking at the same piece of art, and you'd be like, hey, do you see what I see? Because it's a little weird or something. You know what I mean? Or this is super cool. Just that natural flow into that, because forced conversation's the worst. There is nothing worse than going into a new place and then making you go around and say your name and a fun fact about yourself. Stop doing it, people. No one likes it.
Even when they're like, tell us about your business. Like, I don't want to like give you my elevator pitch and like everyone's staring at me. Like, I want that to naturally come. Like, I agree. Don't make me talk if I don't want to talk.
Exactly.
Because
and don't force me to be creative or something right on the spot. That's just so awkward.
Yeah. Like, you think you're probably doing something like, oh, I'm giving them a chance to but no. Like, don't call on me. Don't make me stand up. I already feel awkward. Just get this over.
How red is my face? It's I want to die. Yeah.
Exactly.
Introverts, we get it.
But and I see a lot. There's like a lot of the more I dig, there's a lot of networking events in Erie, but whether they fall into those traps, they never seem to like really grow past like 15, 50 people. Like, and maybe I'm thinking too big for a networking event, but I feel like there's something they're missing.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I just feel like a lot of them are awkward and
Really?
stiff. Like, I just feel like they're the same thing over and over again. It's like, hey, just meet here's more young professionals. Just come and have drinks with us. It's like, okay.
At this point, I'm
So
a full-blown alcoholic.
Yeah, it's like, we're just drinking. I have to wear heels, so I'm already uncomfortable. I don't know anyone here. I'm uncomfortable. Like, give us a little something. And I'm going to just keep name dropping. That's why I love Radius Cowork. It is a co-working space in the Renaissance Center. A lot of remote workers, entrepreneurs, and small businesses have areas in there, and they are growing so fast. And their networking events are not that. I've never felt uncomfortable walking in there, even when I didn't know somebody, to one of their networking events, because they always have a subject. Everyone there's so relaxed and casual, but still professional. And you feel like you can just like sit down there and have a really cool conversation with somebody. They always have the coffee going, which I'm a caffeine addict, so keep the coffee going. But it's cool. They have potlucks, and that's their networking. I mean, it's very chill, and you're not required to sign in. You're not required to have a name tag. You can just sit and listen if you want, or grab food if you want and just sit there. You know, it's a very cool environment too.
Yeah, I think that, and also they have such a good network, kind of going back to like, they have people who can speak on things. They have things they can do. Like, it's not like, hey, I am a X kind of professional, come in, we'll figure it out. Like, there's no gear, like they can find someone.
You'll like sit in there and someone will be like, hey, I design video games. Do you want to like swing over to my office later and like test it out for me? Or be like, hey, so I'm like working on this design. Can you tell me which logo you like better? You know, it's things like that. Or, hey, I'm writing this article for this blog. What do you think of the subject matter? Like, it is super relatable, really cool. It's creating, it's so much more than just like business network. It's creating relationships with other business owners or entrepreneurs, or just inspired people in Erie is really what it is.
Like-minded, yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I feel like a lot in this podcast.
That's okay. I say a lot. So, and like.
I feel like.
I promise. We're intelligent.
Yeah. Please, guys. Muddle through this. But if you can make if you can make an event feel like super exclusive, but make people feel like included as quickly as possible, that's kind of the key to pretty much almost any event.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, a bunch of friends are just hanging out, but anybody can come hang out with, because everyone's going to be our friend pretty much when you come to this event. How do you think you can do that like on a budget? So like if I'm starting an event, I'm not going to be getting in 3 local bands to come play with a stage, but like, how can I make it engaging on a budget?
Okay.
Like a networking event.
A networking event.
Yeah,
I
just throw that.
I was like, where are we going here? What kind of event are we talking about? Are we talking about music festival? Because then you're out of luck. No, a networking event, making that engaging. I mean, I'm a big fan of like kind of like ribbon cutting ceremonies, or like an opening night type thing. I think is really cool if you just started a business, or maybe you're a few months into it, or even like where we are right now, we're in the studio and you record your podcast here, and be like, hey, have a night where you can just bring friends and colleagues or people you've worked with and ask them to bring people, and be like, hey, BYOB, I'll have like a cheese tray and fruit tray, and I just kind of want to show you guys where I work, and maybe meet some of the other people who work in the building. Just have some music going on in the background over a speaker, and keep it real chill, you know?
It seems like just make sure there's a defined reason you're calling people together.
Yes.
Don't just come up with an event like, hey, this is for anybody on Instagram, come meet up. But why are we meeting up?
No, unless there's a celebrity there, they're not going to do it.
Exactly.
I mean, another great way to do it is to support like a local nonprofit, to have people come together and, but that would not be really a networking event, I guess. I guess it could be. It could be like an educational event as well. Like, you know, especially working with some of the local shelters would be super easy. It's like, hey, come meet some of the animals up for adoption and participate in donate every dollar that goes to your drinks, or if you get a drink that goes back to the Anna shelter or Humane Society or Because You Care. You know, it's something like that. But I think if you're trying to do a network, keeping it chill is really important, and inviting your friends and telling them to invite people and tell them why it's important to you that they invite people, and greeting everybody that comes into your door. Like, the worst thing you can do when you're hosting an event is only talk to the people you know or the people you want to know. You need to talk to every single person who walks through that door, whether you think that they'll be important to your career or not.
Because they might know someone who's important to your career or not.
Yeah.
And if you make them feel uncomfortable, then where are you left?
Yeah. I mean, if they walk away and be like, man, that was an uncomfortable situation, then they go tell their friend who tells their friend, and then that's associated with your business's reputation.
Yeah. And then, in your future events, people are going to expect that. Like, if I don't meet to their importance level, I'm a nobody at this event.
Exactly.
And that kind of sucks for everyone involved.
Yeah. Defeats the purpose of the event.
Exactly. So I'm kind of on this kick, and I don't know if it's a thing or not, but I want to ask the expert who's in front of me.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Event planning, this is stuck more on networking because I think it's more of a bit relatable to businesses. That is a disguised networking event. Where so kind of the idea I had was you come to learn how to make mixed drinks.
Yeah.
At a bar, but it's secretly a networking event.
Super cool.
Is that something that you think could get confused though? As far as okay.
I mean, if you do it, well, it depends.
Okay.
I think it could if you open that up to the public, but if you do invite only, or you reach out to only advertise at certain businesses or something, I think that would end up being beneficial. But I think if you put it on Facebook and anybody can come who wants to learn how to make a mixed drinks, you're going to have a lot of college students there who maybe just want to get drunk and don't want to learn. Exactly. But I think that's a fantastic idea, doing something like a mixed drink class or a food class or something, but making that a networking thing. It's creating that content for people to talk about that will then naturally lead into that networking conversation.
Now, as far as the integrity of the event, is it something that you should still be hey, we're doing mixed drinks and networking? Or is it cool to be it's just a mixed drink event, but secretly I want people to get together and meet? You know what I mean?
I think it's always good to be kind of clear about that, just because I think a lot of us who tend to be workaholics want to know if they're going into something where they're going to be expected to be on, or can I relax and just bring a friend and just talk to that friend the whole time, Gotcha. Or am I going to be able to accomplish something here? Does that make sense? I don't know if I described that the right way, but I think it's always good to kind of let your expectations for the event be known. It could be a cute and witty way that you come up with a name for it, or advertise it. But I think it's always good to be very upfront about the real purpose of. You
don't want to catch anyone off guard.
No.
That feels I just wanted to come to learn to make a mixed drink. I don't want to talk to you about your startup idea.
Yeah, because not everybody wants to do that all the time. Or maybe they just need a day off. I mean, and that's important too. I think that's a huge important thing for just in general, everyone who works, especially entrepreneurs and business owners, just making sure that you're taking time off, because that will benefit your your business, your event, everything so much more to make sure you're taking care of your own brain. So
For sure. Now the thing that I guess I don't even know where I was going to go with that, but I do see what you're saying. You want to make sure people are understanding what you're coming here for. You don't want to catch them off guard. Now, if I want to get that event out to people, what would your recommendations be about getting people through the door of your event? How would you market it?
I mean, it depends on the type of event.
Okay.
So if we're going to go with this mixed drink networking event, okay. So what would your max capacity be for this?
I would say for the first one, like 25 people.
Great. Okay. I think email invites or physical invites. And even if you want to do a one step further and create like some sort of poster or something you could put on the community boards of those target businesses you want to be, employees to be involved of. I would steer clear of Facebook events at that point. I would steer clear of anything on the radio or newspaper or things like that, because then that opens it up to way too many people.
Yeah. You'll get a flood of...
Yeah. I think if you want a 25-person networking event to be beneficial, you should probably target the types of expertise or people that you want there to make sure that it's going to be beneficial and you're going to walk away with a good variety of people there. Because, like, what if you get all computer programmers there?
Yeah, then what are they networking for?
Yes.
I see. So be very selective. Now, if we turned it to more of an open event, so like, say either I want a huge networking event where just all types of people can come, or if I run a business where all I do is events, so like I do classes, or like it's like a gym membership. Like,
yeah.
I don't have open gym times, but I want people to come to my events. How do you get the word out so that you can attract as many people?
Sure. You need to narrow down your audience. So do you want the people who read the newspaper and watch the 5 o'clock news? Or do you want Erie Reader, Facebook event people? So I'm a huge advocate for social media because it's free or cheap and the reach is huge. You can select your audience and definitely make sure the biggest mistake people make is not paying enough attention to the visuals of their advertisements. People need to be grabbed immediately and they need to get the gist or the idea or the information off of that advertisement within like 3 seconds. Don't jam too much on there. Don't make it too busy. Don't use a blurry photo. Make sure that you're investing in that time. And there's a lot of highly recommend meeting local graphic designers depending on the event, or even using free apps. Like I use canva.com all the time, which is like fantastic.
It's a lifesaver.
It is. It can be a lifesaver, but some people just don't have that knack, and that's okay. It's worth investing in talking to a friend if you could, do a little trade with them or something if you can't afford to pay them, something, find a way to like benefit each other.
Gotcha. So social media seems like a pretty good one. Graphic designer. I mean, I feel like you should be talking to other people who are experts in these fields.
Oh yeah.
100%. Don't be like do it all Joe.
No.
Like, I think that kind of seems where it stems from. If you want to have a successful event, no matter what the scale is, find the people who know what they're doing and let them do it.
Exactly. I think that is the best thing you could do, honestly. And I mean, furthermore, to make sure you have a successful event, the more people, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But
vital people.
You want enough people invested in it that they are going to help spread that word and get people excited about it.
Now, when people tackle events on their own, it can be very stressful.
Yeah.
And that's something we talked about a little bit before, is like, how do you manage, like, so if someone's listening and wants to get into event planning, how do you
prepare for the worst? No. I struggle with depression and clinical anxiety. I'm trying to be very open about that because I think a lot of people do, and there's such a bad stigma that's associated with it. However, it is such an important thing to talk about, and it's an important thing to take care of, to be a better person, more successful. Once I started paying attention to that, I grew exponentially. So I guess prepare for a lot of stress when you're planning an event. It's not going to be easy. You have to realize you're going to be contacting all different kinds of people. There's going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of scheduling, a lot of things that come up and be like, oops, sorry, I can't make it that time. You're going to realize that, a venue will fall through, or something turns out to be more expensive than what you planned for. Always have A, B, and C plans. And just my biggest mantra that I tell everybody is just remember, everything's fixable. You can't freeze when an emergency happens. You can't freeze when a problem happens. Just start immediately starting to think about the next best thing. And that might not work out either, but just keep going down the line. You have to be active, and prepare to be forgiving with yourself. And when you're working with a team of people on events, you're going to see the absolute best of people, and you're going to see the absolute worst, and they're going to see the same in you. And it's so important to be understanding of each other, because it's so easy to start blaming each other or take it to heart, or to have a breakdown. It is, because it's exhausting. Events, especially leading up to them, depending on what you're doing. Like, I've done a lot of festivals, which are multiple day events with a lot of moving parts, and you don't sleep, and you put in 18-hour days, it's just a lot of being patient with yourself and the people around you.
Yeah.
And it's okay to take a moment to go to the bathroom or to hide in a corner for a minute.
Yeah.
Don't stay there all day.
Yeah. Get back out there. I mean, I think it's pretty impressive that somebody as yourself, who you say you struggle with depression and anxiety, is doing something so high stress, which is like, that's kind of crazy. I mean,
it's very crazy. Don't worry, I know it.
No, and all the things you were saying were great. Being able to forgive yourself, you put a lot of your time, energy, and passion into events. So be okay when it kind of fails. Do you mind going through kind of your journey of getting to that place?
Sure. Yeah. Whew.
We're really ending this on a deep
note,
guys.
That's a loaded question. It's
yeah.
So I guess I had started dealing with depression when I was in elementary school. So it's genetic. It's very far back. The anxiety probably started in high school and got severe in college. I come from a wonderful family, but we live in a small town, and the stigma at the time was very much if you can't handle this on your own, then there's something wrong with you. So it wasn't until after college that I started getting help for it, which I highly recommend. Therapists are wonderful. They're great. And sometimes medication's necessary. Maybe it's not for everyone. I'm not the biggest fan of medication. I try to be on as little as humanly possible, enough to get me to a point where I feel like I can handle the rest on my own. And that's where my therapy had come in and teaching me a lot of tips and tricks and on the things that were my triggers and what things to avoid or how to handle them. But I guess compared to college, I had a lot of mental breakdowns after events. So the planning of events and stuff usually went fairly okay through the execution of the event or close to, but there would be moments where the adrenaline wore off and there would just be an absolute breakdown. Or, I don't remember ever, not saying that I never did, I don't remember ever freezing. I was really lucky that I always let my desire to take care of other people outweigh, whatever I was dealing at the time. If something needed fixed, then I was going to fix it. But then if it failed or whatever, I'd beat myself up a lot afterwards. But I mean, still to this day, it's a struggle. I just make sure that I step back. I do take occasional medication for, if I get panic attacks. So that happened during Celebratory when I was working on that. That was one of the most high stress situations of my life. I worked with some really wonderful people. I don't regret a moment, but mental health wise, I was at a severely bad place by the end because I had just run myself ragged. And I was very grateful at that moment to have a therapist and to have that moment of that when I still had to perform, I could take something that helped me feel like a normal human being because my body was just shutting down. My brain was attacking itself. And just having a supportive support system around you, making sure that you have one person on the team and always being honest with your team about like, hey, I'm about to freak out. Can't handle this for a minute, So I've gotten good at taking a step back and taking a breath and realizing I don't have to control everything. Or if something goes wrong and I just let people do it and then I can come back and fix it later type of thing. Like you just, I don't know if that really answered your question or not,
No,
but that's kind of how I've learned to adapt a little bit is just kind of learning to trust other people, learning to take a break for myself and
giving yourself grace in the moment. Like, hey, it's okay.
Which is very, very, very hard to do. And you have to realize like I'm almost 30 and it took me this long to get to that point, so it's a daily practice. And the more I do events, the better I get at it.
And for the people listening, they might be like, wow, this took a weird turn. But, the reason why I find this so important is because like, as I've like been doing these podcasts, I've been noticing that whenever I talk to people almost about anything, there is like a trickle of some kind of mental health aspect of like making sure that's okay, that's good. And then the more I research on like how rampant it is in the entrepreneur business culture, that like I really do want to make it a point in this podcast to address it and kind of make it a topic that's not so much stigma wrapped around it, so people feel good they can talk about it. So that's for everybody watching or listening. Like this wasn't just like randomly like let's talk about mental health. But actually, after you saying that and listening to a few TED Talks actually about it, do you feel like the event managing actually helps you manage that a little bit?
Yeah, weirdly, I think I've never thought about it that way, but when you say that, yes. And I think, kind of going back to what you said like a lot of entrepreneurs are dealing with this. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand of why it's become easier for me or more successful for me to handle this on a daily basis or accept it in my life. Entrepreneurs and people who decide to pursue a career out of the norm, we're doing something we are 100% passionate about. And I think that makes it harder on us when things don't go right. But I also think it makes us persevere through that sometimes. And you learn a lot about yourself. And you have to be willing to continue learning about yourself and continuing to, is this career path worth constantly facing this demon, or this bad, ugly part of yourself that you may not like. And it's worth it because eventually you break it down and turn it into something else and you can still be successful. You just have to be willing to like break through.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's never going to go away. I still have even we just did Galapagooza at the zoo this year and it was our biggest fundraiser of the year. And I get really stressed out and none of what I say reflects on the zoo. But for me, there's a very large team of people there and there was something I had organized and it was very hard because there were only too many cooks in the kitchen and nothing was going as I planned. And I almost had a meltdown because I was on very little sleep and whatnot. But I took a step back And I was very blessed that one of the other team members kind of noticed I needed a moment. So she kind of like, hey, you know, told me a little joke and told me just to breathe. And it was, what did I need? And, you know, it worked out. And that was exactly what I needed to do, because everything in me wanted to just start freaking out and taking over and do control. But physically taking a step back to the corner of the room and just kind of watching people and realizing, hey, they're trying to help was very important.
Yeah, I think that's, and I was listening to a TED Talk where they were talking about, he was talking about like medication for depression and stuff, and how he thinks that that's not really the answer. It's having people being able to figure out how to take those physical step backs in situations. Because I think his story was like, he felt like there was like this huge empty like hole in him just pouring out all of his energy throughout the day. So he goes to the doctor, they prescribe him something, he feels good for a few months, and then it comes back. And then he had it to the point where he was taking the maximum dose of everything he could, and still feeling the way he did. Yeah. And I thought that was super interesting, and kind of where it's kind of clicking for me with the event side of it. I think that, like we were saying, that being able to, one, see an event, plan it, look at all the logistics, is kind of a cool way to look at also trying to work through any kind of mental hiccup you might run into.
Sure. And just to kind of like piggyback off of that, I don't agree with him, but I don't disagree. I think we are also in a society, as much as there is a stigma around it, people are over medicating themselves without actually challenging themselves to be better or to work through things on their own. I'm an advocate for both, because I think it depends on the person though. For me, I mean, being depressed, severely depressed in second grade and not wanting to get out of my bed, you can't tell me that that's not something wrong in my brain.
Yeah.
I truly, truly believe that there can be a chemical imbalance there. So I am lightly medicated for my depression, but I only medicate to a point where I feel like a normal human being and have normal reactions, and still have to fight through those things. Like, I still have a tendency for depression. It's just not as like controlling or overpowering as it would be before. But I lost my train of thought.
No, you're all good.
But I think there's some people who use it as a cop-out, and I think a lot of people do, and you have to be careful. I know I had a different doctor, and I was on medication that was overpowering, and it wasn't right, and I knew it. Yeah. And I was able to adjust that and get to a healthy point. But like I think I told you before, like my anxiety primarily is me exercising myself, like, you know, like exercising actions to help myself through them. It doesn't make it go away completely, and that's why I have like a medication for if I have a panic attack, which is I've taken it 3 times in my life. I'm very lucky, but I don't think medication is not the answer, but I don't think it is the answer.
Exactly.
I think you need to learn to have a healthy balance, and people don't learn how to better themselves or how to face those ugly parts of themselves and see how that can become a benefit or a positive part of you. And that's so important.
And he actually, this just came to me about events and stuff. He was talking about, excuse me, a story about a doctor who had a patient who was like going through the same, like he was prescribing her pills. She really wasn't getting anything from it. So he tried to take a different route where he used an event to actually help her. And what he said was, he was like, hey, I've been struggling with a little bit of like mental like drain and stuff. I'm going to this event with these group of people, like a support group, and you should come with me. So she ended up going with him the one day, and as a group, they decided to come together and do a weekly project. Not like a support group, but like they all just decided to pick up gardening. So like after the event, they would all read their gardening books. They came together and they started like a community garden. And like from him like doing like research while being in this community, like seeing the way that their depression and anxiety went down when they were helping other people. And when they were like actually as like a tribe of people, because he was talking about how in America, well, in the world, we're doing pretty good than we ever have, but people are more lonely than they've ever been ever. And he thinks, and that's kind of where his reasoning comes behind where he thinks a lot of like the spike in depression
Yes.
and stuff is because people are continually isolating themselves when it's completely against our nature. Like,
yeah, we're social beings.
exactly. And when you think of like he was like, humans are the only creation that will purposely pull themselves away from people. Like other animals and groups of like insects and like they band together. Like you take a bee away from the hive and it goes crazy.
Right.
Like what do you think happens when a human starts to retract themselves to be on their phone all the time, sitting there like, and it was just really cool how an event
that
can
is
change
awesome. Yeah, it's interesting because with all this technology, we feel like we're being social, but we're not. And you kind of, I guess, hit something in me. I think that is, I mean, the number one reason I love doing events is I love making a difference in people's lives. All I want to do with my life is to make people's life better or make it happier. And that's what keeps me going. And I think that is what's helped with my depression. And yeah, and I think you said something too about, you know, they started doing this gardening club. I wanted to touch on something that you said at the beginning of, you know, maybe you need to start like pretending to be happy in the morning. That I don't want to promote like faking anything, but there is something with depression or with anxiety or mental health. Certain areas of mental health, this obviously wouldn't work for everything, but there is something to be said with going through those motions and consistently putting yourself in positive situations that maybe you don't naturally feel like you want to do because you want to isolate yourself. It will impact you. Going to a gardening club, just being around those positive people. I force myself, I'm an introvert and I work a lot and I love to be alone. But I force myself to go out with friends at least 2 times a week. And since I started doing that, my life has been so much better. You know, and it might take a few times, but like definitely encourage people to try doing that when you're dealing with those issues. I think it helps, and events are a great way to do it because you're forced to be with people.
Exactly. You go out, and if you're a good host, you can really be helping somebody instead of making them feel isolated.
Yeah, so you may be feeling crappy, but you're making somebody feel good, and that will circle back and make you feel better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this was a very productive conversation.
Oh, thanks. Sorry for all the rambling. I don't know if I always make sense, but
no, that was really good because like you could definitely see it was something you were passionate about, and that's what I really want in this podcast is people who are passionate about something just being able to like ramble and rant about what they're passionate about, because I figured like if I start a business podcast and I talk about event planning, it's gonna be like a 10-minute segment because like it's just what I read on the internet. But when you find people who actually care about these things, it's just so much more fun to talk to them.
I love it. I'll do events my whole life if I can.
Well, if anybody out there wants to have an event and they want your help,
yes,
how can they get in contact with you?
Okay, so I'm in the process of setting up my website right now. So coming soon. In the meantime, find me on like social media. Facebook is usually your best bet. Emily Smicker, like the candy bar, but with an M, like as in monkey. Or just email me, emsmicker@gmail.com.
Awesome. For all of your event needs.
Yeah, I'll do my best to help. At the very least, we'll get a cup of coffee and talk about it.
Sounds
good. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Now, you tell me, who else is pumped to go out and start an event now? I mean, I learned so many different things about the industry, different takeaways, and mostly it is find professionals to help you because you do want it to be the highest quality that you can. And with talking to people, it seems like with how saturated it is, it's how to bring the most engagement to the person coming to the event. And guys, if you have any questions about that, please reach out to Emily. She just listed all of her contact information down there, so give her a shout out. She has been an amazing guest, super authentic, and just a great person to have in the network of people I know now. And I definitely highly recommend you reaching out. Also, if you're listening to this, I thank you so much. Please leave a comment or rating if you so feel like it. Helps me out a lot, know what you guys are liking and how to make this better. But till next time, guys, it's Aspiring for More.